All right, peace, y'all. What's up? This is Brother Hondo. I'm here with Chief Yuya, Asana Nu. Just building on polygamy, of course, because, you know, what else would I be talking about, right? And I said that in one of the last videos. You know, I think we've been talking about this subject now for about 7 years now. And we got to talking about it early on, back when I first started teaching, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And, you know, it's been a wild ride because I believe that there were only several people on social networks talking about polygamy, but they weren't doing it a lot because, you know, they had their own individual lives to handle and things like that. But I believe I was the first one to come up with a scholarly paradigm to teach it from all different levels, and not limited to, say, just, you know, one particular community or faith or religion.
Yeah, I definitely would say in terms of bringing detailed information. I mean, you had little snippets here and there, and I mean, even still, there's been kind of an explosion because prior to maybe just a few years ago, you had a handful of books, literally. You know, you had maybe 3-4 books, and you may have had a couple of ABC specials on the Mormons. You know, and that was about it. Yeah, as far as information.
Or Islam, you know, because it's those Muslims who do that.
It's the Muslims, right?
You know, way over there somewhere.
Muslims, you know? Or the Mormons, you know. So, yeah, I would definitely say in terms of coming on the net and not just making a plea for people to engage, or in particular for women to engage in it, but really just breaking down the details, the mores, the chronology of it. Yeah, I definitely would say that you pioneer in that area, and I think to some degree, I mean, obviously you have the book by Patricia Dixon, which I have behind me.
Which is a very good book, by the way. I mean,
both
you know, Dr. Dixon, I think, has been doing work in that field for well over 30 years, probably closer to 40 years. Yeah, man. And specifically in the so-called Black American community and in the different Black religious communities. Sure. I mean, she's gone and done ethnographic research and lived with these families overseas, here. I mean, she's spoken with hundreds, if not thousands, of people about it. So, you know, and I actually had the honor of meeting Dr. Dixon, and on her turf, you know, and where she teaches, and I'm gonna tell you something, man. When I met her, I was like a little kid, man. I was like, oh man, this is Dr. Dixon, you know what I'm saying? But she's very humble, very, very nice lady, and you know, she actually dropped some jewels, man. Dr. Dixon is the real deal. So make sure you pick up Dr. Dixon's book. It's called "We Want for Our Sisters What We Want for Ourselves." Once again, I'm gonna put in a shameless plug for Dr. Dixon. So you know, shouts out to you, Dr. Dixon.
And there's 2 versions of it. I actually have them both behind me up there somewhere, but
2004 and the 2009 edition.
Right. So, there's an abridged version as well. You know, they're both good. You know, I would suggest you get them both. Yeah, you know,
most definitely.
One is a bit more exhaustive than the other, but definitely if you want some of the history, some of the rhyme and reason of it from different ethnic perspectives, you know, get the larger one as well. You know.
Well, you know, that's what's funny. Like, ever since I started teaching on this subject online in, I believe, May 2010. Okay. And it caused like this big firestorm. Like, nobody on the internet was talking about polygamy 7 days a week, all year. Right. You know, and I think I did it for 4 straight years before I actually took a break for 2.5 months, and then I got right back to it. And of course, you know, now I think there's over 70 videos that I have on YouTube, so y'all check that out. And the Polygamist Papers, An Introduction to Polygamist Culture and Its Principles, Pitfalls, and Ethics. That book, out of about 4,000 books on Amazon, I believe it's tied in the top 5. I think it's 4th or 5th, tied with 4 or 5 other books, and it's got a 4.6 out of 5-star rating. So it is, in 47 reviews as of today. So you know, it's actually, so that's a success. I will call it a success. Sure. Especially considering that when I was writing it, you remember what I was going through, why I was writing it.
Absolutely.
I had very little material resources. I was running out of my own internal resources. I mean, I was exhausted. Sure. And I ended up having to put out that 54-page manual because people were asking for it, and it was supposed to be this larger, this much more vast work, which is going to be coming out, and it's called The Family Crest: Polygamy as Economic Warfare. So that book is going to debut, probably sometime late summer, early fall, because I've got a lot of resources to add to it, including getting some reviews on deck. So, it's exciting. All this work is finally paying off, but it was a long road.
Well, what's interesting, and I mean not to really throw any salt in the game, but I find it interesting, even in terms of the work that I do from a spiritual perspective, that and I speak about this sparingly, because it's a touchy subject where you don't want to come off as being ungrateful for, like you said, the successes that we have, but at the same time, it's hard not to, or it's hard to ignore. A lot of times you see other individuals presenting information that not only lacks integrity, but lacks substantial realism and authenticity. As it relates to this subject matter, spiritual subject matter. But those are the ones that get propelled so far forward to the point that even without the hours of research, the hours of documentation and proving and cross-referencing and cross-checking
and traveling spending your own money, and being exhausted to the point of you just want to stop. You don't even want to talk about it for another year. You have to put up with ridicule at work, because at the time I know that I had a regular gig. And I almost got fired, a couple of times from jobs, and that's one reason why I ventured out and I started doing my own thing.
I remember.
But you're right. Like it's the whole narrative needs to be rewritten, as far as how we discuss it, what angle we're coming from, the sources we use, and then our method of communication. Because something we were talking about just before we started recording here was how. Now a whole bunch of people are talking about polygamy. Right. Beforehand, you really didn't see anyone outside of those ABC specials, outside of these news channels,
polyandry really talking in the Himalayas, maybe.
Right, they talk about polyandry in the Himalayas. Tibetan, which is also called Tibetan polyandry. You don't really see a lot of scholarly research being put forth on a regular basis by people who are not professors.
Sure.
Okay. And I believe that's what I was bringing to the table. And, plus, most of my comrades like yourself are polygamists. So I'm around polygamy all the time. And one thing that we've done, we're constantly refining our own systems in-house.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we speak about that a lot in terms of the general conversation. As I always say, this is a general's talk, and
general's talk. Yeah. So you're saying that there's leadership involved.
Oh, absolutely. And it may not be a clear, defined, and concrete form or panel of individuals, but one of the things is when you're moving in a certain vibration, with doing certain things, you get to see. You can kind of test the authenticity, and the genuineness of those who say that they're also doing it, and you kind of know what you can talk about and what you can't.
Yeah.
And there's aspects of, like I don't call myself a polygamist per se. I have family, and I happen to have a large family. And I am astutely in tune with my primal instincts.
Yes.
And I know how those primal instincts fit into a modern paradigm. So we're not speaking about my bestial nature per se, but certainly the primal nature that drives my essence and my force forward, and that makes me a better father and a better mate, a better businessman, a better priest, a better friend, a better brother, so forth and so on. And there are elements that revolve around the actual family formation that go into that. So I think it's interesting when you get into, again, the general's talk, because there's things that a lot of people are not ready to hear. For instance, a lot of times, and I've shared this with you before, like sometimes people they feel that they need to justify their family formations to people.
Right.
Based on their level of development and their circumference, however limited it may be, their circumference of information.
Yeah, in other words, they're engaging in apologetics. Like they need to like defend polygamy for all polygamists. When it's like, just live your life. If they don't like it, they don't like it. Because you'll spend more energy on that than actually building and maintaining your household.
Well, that's the thing. We've kind of come into such a passive, apologetic culture where we just don't do. We speak a little bit too much. So, like, for instance, like I've shared with you, I've written a book on polygyny. Never published it.
Right.
Because I only give it as a part of the dossier that goes to the people who join my family. So that they can understand the culture, understand the expectations, understand it.
It's part of the curriculum for consorts coming in.
Absolutely.
In other words, and it's required reading.
Absolutely. Right. But it's not necessarily for general consumption because the general populace is a lot of times they're assimilating one thing with another when it doesn't really. That's why, when we speak about polygamy, we're speaking about multiple marriages. And as soon as you mention the word marriages, there's a certain reference of paradigm that is invoked in a person's mind.
They start thinking Western marriage and
marriage
so you just have a bunch
of Western
bigamy.
Marriages.
They try to equate it with bigamy, which
Exactly.
is having different spouses on state papers.
Right.
At least in the U.S.
Exactly.
But polygamy or polygyny specifically with us, mating with or married to multiple women, it doesn't actually require any civic law or government to approve of it.
Right.
And that's something that I think we've been trying to speak on. I mean, just in regular conversation, just letting people know that's not what it is. Because people equate that in bigamy because the Western powers have made that the dominant structure of marriage.
Sure.
Via prescriptive monogamy.
Sure. So yeah, it's very interesting when you start getting into and to me, in my opinion, I think it's time for some of the deeper level of discussion because there is a time period for things, and a lot of times when your sacred discussions are intruded upon, whether by they're intruded upon by neophytes who may not know as much, or just they're corrupted and they're perverted, then that gives you an opportunity now to kick it up to the next level.
Right.
So like you said, a lot of people are talking about polygyny now after you've laid down a lot of information. Okay, well, cool. The information is laid down now. So what's the next level that we can go into that those who are not bona fide in this movement can't necessarily follow and intrude upon? And then by the time they catch up to that, we'll go to the next thing. It's almost similar to like the Illuminati talks we were joking around about earlier.
Yep.
It's like, well, if it's the Illuminati, it's no longer the Illuminati anymore. Right. Once you have the name of it,
it's not secret.
Right.
There's nothing secret nor sacred because those words are related.
Sure.
There's nothing that is special about it anymore.
Right. And that's purposeful.
Yep.
There's a time when people say, okay, well, leave this here. We're done with this. Leave the ghost and the shell of this here for them to nibble on this while we establish the new paradigm. And by time, so you're always 3 or 4 steps behind. So even like you said, and I have to say even this, a lot of the videos on polygyny or polygamy, what I've noticed, because I don't spend a lot of time on YouTube surfing anything like that, but so correct me if I'm wrong, but I see a lot of videos of people sitting in front of their webcam saying, this is what I think of polygamy.
And no documentation. There's no... They can't go to India, Africa, China, or even go to dignitaries who are still engaging in polygamy to this day anywhere in the world and actually have them verify anything.
Right.
Which is actually... that's what we do. Like specifically... I know that us, and I could point out, several other people who are also well versed in this. That's what we're bringing, because when we step in front of the camera, we know that you can go to Nigeria and whatever we're teaching, you can actually take your family and go to Nigeria and use what we're saying, and it's not going to be any type of limitation based on hyper emotionalism or this is what Mama and them said or I don't like it. So, it's like,
Right.
wait a minute. Why don't we get down to the brass tacks and give you what can be applied in a modern real-time context? Because otherwise information is invalid. All knowledge has to be able to be applied in context. All knowledge is contextual. In fact, the priesthoods and all this secret knowledge that we're discussing, that's what priesthoods were for. Priesthoods were there because those people were trained for decades in how to utilize knowledge, in wisdom, and how to utilize knowledge. So when we get the rank and file, talking about what they think about the Bible, what they think about Torah,
right,
what they think about the Quran, but you're not an expert in the Quran and the Bible and Torah,
sure,
or in Ifa, or anything. When you have not been trained from an early age up through the decades, whether your 40s, 50s, into your elder years, it's like it's empty because
right,
you're not trained in it. It's like you going through boot camp and then wanting to be in the special forces right away. Like you need to go on a mission right away. It's like, you can't do it because you haven't been trained.
Well, that's part of what the voicing of social media provides for people. The sacrifices I put in my name and my email address, maybe even my phone number. And now through that payment, I'm allowed to say whatever I want. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, obviously it's a double-edged sword.
Right.
But again, those who are actually engaged in the practice in a real way, and that's the thing. Like when we speak about, that's why, like you've spoken to me more about putting out information that I know and things like that. And I've never truly wanted to do that. I don't really, because I don't want to be the polygamy guy. Like I said, you're the polygamy. That's all you got that.
That wasn't done on purpose. Trust me.
Right,
it kind of just fell into my lap.
So you got on the horse and raced out in front of everybody. You the pioneer. You got that. I'm Chief Yuya. People know me for something else.
Because I've been trying to get you to publish your book widely. And you were like, nah, man. You're like, nah. Like that's just my fam. You know what I'm saying? Because we've had probably hundreds of hours of discussion about polygamy, along, my other brothers as well, is the same thing. And I mean, we're always talking about how we're refining our own households and we trade notes. And it's interesting because that builds an accountability structure. It actually builds a clan system.
Right.
And that's something that's one of those deep things we're talking about.
That's the general's talk.
You never hear anybody else making polygamy videos, talking about it anywhere on the internet, talking about building clans and building tribes. You just don't hear it because that requires what? That requires years of time for character development. That means you need to take years of time to build your personal skill set.
Sure.
That means that you need to be other-centered. In other words, you can't be selfish.
Right.
Okay. You can't be self-centered. If you are, you can't engage in polygamy. If you have a Western mindset regarding how to relate to your brothers and how to relate to women. I'm talking to the men because this is a general's talk, right? I'm talking about the leaders of family, who are the men. No, we don't teach matriarchy up in here. So, we have to understand.
It's not our place to.
It's not our place to.
Yeah.
So by doing those things, we kind of see where we're supposed to head with the discussion. So I agree, man. It's because a lot of the information being put out now, and I'm just being honest. I've been sitting back watching the information.
Yeah, I know. Right now, you're being kind of humane.
Yeah,
and I'm following. It's late at night too. We just hit an Ethiopian spot, and broke bread. Brother Hondo and my youth. We went and so it's actually late right now too. So I'm following your vibe a little bit, but I know right now you're being humane. I know you really want to chop heads. Yeah, but I said, you're the polygamy guy, so I'm going to be humane with you. But I know what you're saying under what you're saying. Brother, there's a lot of BS out there.
Man, it's basically a lot of bad information being put out about polygamy, and I've watched. See, I can name all the people who before 2010 were on the internet talking about it.
Yeah, because it was a handful.
Dream Girl 360.
Yeah, you was gonna say that.
She's got good videos. She and her husband got great videos. Another shameless plug. So Y'all owe me some money. I'm just kidding. Nah, Dream Girl 360 series. They have some great videos. Their family. Wise Nubian. Now, Wise Nubian.
Say Wise Nubian 360.
Dream Girl 360 and Wise Nubian. Wise
yeah,
Nubian.
I know Wise Nubian.
He
martial artist brother.
Yeah, martial artist brother, Igbo tribesman. He has a very rough approach to the whole thing, but see, we need that. Yeah. We need people coming in from different angles with different approaches. As long as it's accurate, that should be our main concern. But him coming from West Africa, he has a very deeply rooted cultural outlook, and we need to respect that. I know I like what he has to say about polygamy. He hits them hard. He hits hard against Western culture, but we're being very humane here because we've been watching the information since then come in, and a lot of people making videos. A lot of that information is bad information. Sometimes I'll be sitting back and just watching, and laughing because it's not documented and true. You can't take that information with your family, build a family, and utilize mate selection, courtship, make the relationship work. Then go to a country where they've been doing it longer than you and have them verified.
No,
I've challenged people about that, and they get mad at me. I'm like, but if the information that I've been providing, I got it directly from people who have had it work, and then I grew up in it too.
Well, the truth is, man, for some of the males who would even attempt to do that, you're going to get knocked for your woman. You probably get knocked for all your wives. Because I've had situations where men have come into my homestead and saw the harmony with their family and saw the harmony that existed between myself and my consorts, and have gotten those DMs later from their consorts, or they've tried to buddy up with my consorts because once they see like, wow, this is really how it's supposed to be, this is really as harmonious as it should be, you're going to get knocked for all your women, and it's going to be an easy knock. I have an elder, Yoruba elder.
You being real humane, brother.
Yeah.
You and see, we've had the discussion where you just lay it out just like that, and I'm like,
how I am.
Yeah.
But
you being real nice right now.
Yeah. It's. Yeah.
You ain't being a savage. You
right. If it was me by myself, maybe I might. But I gotta be mindful of your rep too. But
well, I appreciate it, brother. It's all good.
Yeah. I have a Yoruba elder sister. And that was one of the highest compliments she gave me once. I was with her, and I had some of my family members with me, and she said, I've never seen it done so harmoniously. The way that you have them all working together, because we were doing something. We were, doing some commerce. And she said, the way you all are working together, you're like a machine. And she's like, and everyone's laughing and joking. And, I've never seen it. And this is a sister from the continent, Bush sister.
See, that's the verification I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was an honor to have her say that, and I said, man, thanks, mama. I call her mama. I was like, thanks, mama. She was like, yeah, son, I'm proud of you. She said I was skeptical, but when me seeing it and seeing how everyone is, and and I can see everyone's happy.
Feels good, doesn't it, to receive that kind of accolade.
But that's the thing. There's small nuances to it that just coming to a sister and saying, yeah, we're going to nation build, and let me get with you, and
the nation building.
Yeah, because now it's so sad because certain terms have been almost. They've been villainized through blasphemy. Now we can't even, like Hotep. Hotep is a problem now. Nation building is a problem now.
Man, I wish somebody would tell me Hotep. Now I get mad, even though I know they're just greeting me. Now I'm mad. I'm like, man, here we go.
It's an honorable term, but you already know where it takes us to.
Shalom, brother. It's like, okay.
Right.
You got to think about who's saying it to you, because are they really coming in that spirit of Hotep or Shalom, or even, hi or hello or greetings?
But, there was a time you didn't have to think about it. Like, there was a time, and I cut my hair off, but there was a time when, even if I saw someone with locks, there was an immediate certain comfortability, because I knew if you have locks, you've gone through a process to wear those locks.
Right.
You've denied some things and whatnot. Now it's it's a different thing.
It's a fad now.
Sure.
Exactly. It's a fad.
Right. So, there's just like I said, there's a general talk and discussion in terms of actually making plurality work. And I think some of the scholarship that you've brought forth, and I see little speckles of it here and there, not much, but a little bit. But I think the scholarship you brought forth now calls for a different type of movement going forward, and a movement that's a little harder to emulate. And that's really because if you make it integrative, one of the things that like you're speaking about in terms of context, that becomes viable in a situation where we have an agreed system across the board. Yeah. Even if there's just if there's 3 or 4 standards, right? That we say, okay, this is what we're going to fall on. Without that, the context of that knowledge becomes a little bit shaky. Of even when it comes to like why polygyny. Like I'll give you an example of sometimes of some of the primal information, the primal honesty you have to give. I remember a sister asking me that once. Well, why isn't one woman enough? And of course the standard
because it's just not. Right. We could keep it simple. It's just not.
Keep it real. Yeah. But the standard answer is no. It's not that one woman isn't enough. But we're building something here. We're empire building. Yeah. And I was honest, and I said, that's an aspect of it. Obviously, because any woman who's ever been in my family know, and you're gonna come in working. Yeah. I don't curate. And I don't preserve women when they come into my situation.
He said curate and preserve.
Yeah, I'm not into that, man. We are a working family. So, everyone gets a role.
Ain't no caking going on.
No cupcaking in my home.
Yeah, I understand.
So everyone is getting a role. One of my rules typically is that you can't work for other people. And in particular, alien ethnic groups, if you're in my family.
That's right.
Because I become the junior at that point, so...
Well, actually, it's polyandry.
Because that's exactly what it is, right.
When a woman, and specifically men like us, when our women go and work for someone else, especially because, most corporations, even small-scale jobs, somewhere there's men leading.
There's a man leading, yeah.
Okay. Even when they don't physically hear his voice, by them reading and contracting and signing on the dotted line, you're signing over to his household because family is business and business is family. Right. See, so we see it from a 720-degree perspective. But whenever our women go off and work for someone else, their supervisor or the leader of that business, that corporation, that is the elder husband in a polyandrous marriage. Absolutely. Who then has jurisdiction over the movements of the woman in relation to the other man, which in this case would be you. Right. So you're the junior husband, which means you have no jurisdiction over that woman. The elder husband, her boss, tells her when to get to work. That means that she is going to arrange her whole life around that 8 to 12 hour span of time. Right. She's going to get up at a certain time. She's going to dress a certain way. She's going to smell a certain way. She's going to cut her hair a certain way. Style it a certain way. She's going to only leave and get medical leave, get maternity leave, and take vacation time when that man, her boss, the CEO, the president, tells her when to do that. Now, if a woman is over that corporation, that is now a lesbian relationship. See? So that's what we're trying to get across to people when we say...
Yeah, that's a tough one for people to get, because it takes some measure of mathematics and your understanding to kind of sit back before you have an emotional reaction and start to put the equation together, because you have the same scenario often, not every time, but often when you engage with a woman who has children, and the father of those children are still active in those children's lives. Yes, it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah. If you want to move to another state, you have to get clearance from that man first. So right there in that moment, you become the junior. Yep. Well, let me call so-and-so and see. Oh, he's arguing, he's riffing. I don't know. Well, let's wait. Let me see. Let me ask him again around his birthday. So every time you got to butter him up.
And this happens every time.
Yeah, there might be flirtation that has to go. There might even be a culture between them two that you're not aware of. Right. For her to get certain things to go on, So again, it's another form of
What'd
polyandry.
he say? Well, what'd he say?
Mm-hmm.
He said it's cool. Oh, okay, cool.
Good.
We can
now I can do this.
Right. So now you moving according to what the previous man said now, which is natural according to the heavens and the earth, because he slept with her first. Therefore, he imprinted her body first. Now, when you have children with a woman, or rather when a woman has our children, she's now imprinted even deeper because she has our child.
Right.
And that man being alive in the earth, that means his energy is still present in the earth. Okay, it still has a body. That means that he still has an agency in the earth. And a man's agency is first to his family. Once he gets outside of himself, his agency stretches to his family. His family is those children. That's why I actually made a video a few months ago on, it's called Polygamy is the New Child Support Hustle. Y'all got to check that out. So I actually pointed that out. And that's a great point, because that's one of the things that we have to engage in properly is mate selection.
Right.
So if we do decide to take on a woman who has a child, there are rules for that. I know y'all don't like rules, but polygamy has some very strict rules. And when especially a polygamous man takes on a woman with children, and we both have experience in this thing, we're speaking of experience, it's difficult because in most cases the man is alive. So now you have to make a decision. Do you really want to take that risk? Because a businessman is going to do a risk-benefit analysis. And if there are more risks than benefits, you need to, baby girl is not going to be in your cipher.
Right. And, it's dependent on the deepness of taking on. What do you mean by that? Not every woman is necessarily going to come in as a full-fledged consort. Right. Based on some of maybe her pre-existing conditions. That's right. You may have to relegate her to a certain position, and a lot of times people will look at that and say, "Well, I don't want that." Well, then go back to your, original husband.
Your previous position, which is usually not a good situation according to them. So you need to get this situation that's based on your track record, because in every other facet of life, we have to move according to our previous track record. Right. Your credit history, your work history. That's why you present with a resume. You present your credit report. Okay, everybody gets these reports about you. But then when you go to a man, when the women come to a man, all of a sudden they don't want no fact checking. Sure. Like,
and you know what? Yeah. I would say this, and I'm not one who always feels like I have to do, and vice versa. Because that can be simpish. But yeah. Honestly, vice versa. Yep.
That's right.
Looking at that man, because that's one of the downfalls and the blasphemy that comes with polygyny, because a lot of these guys who are saying they're doing it and not really doing it, they have a bunch of girlfriends. Yeah. It's not the same. Yeah. And sometimes, again, look at their track record. I've had sisters that I've spoken to through consultations and things like that, who are newly married or newly in relationships, and they're having problems, and you can always sense sometimes, and I'll say, okay, how many children does this guy have? Oh, how did you know? How many children? 4. By how many different women? 4. Yep. So like, knowing that now, why did you marry him after, knowing him for 4 months? Right. Right. Didn't you look at some of that track record and or what does he do for a living? Oh, he's trying to get his record label off the ground. How old is he?
And he's 55.
45.
He old. Dude old. It's like, come on,
but
man.
He's good. He's talented, so it's like, sometimes, and you know what? I always say on my shows that, well, I don't always say, but, women are the world suckers. And if you know that, as a father, you protect your child, you protect your daughter in a certain way, because you know that her spiritual chemistry is that of receptivity. Yeah. So that's why she's easier to dupe, because she's more receptive.
And that's why we guard them so tight, Right. And that's why, sometimes even as grown men, we tell sisters like, look, like, why are you with that type of guy? We're not trying to get with them. Most times, it's not that we're flirting with them, and a lot of times it's mistaken for that. We're like, no, because what those women do with those men is eventually going to impact us at some point. Sure. In the
Could be their children. There's a cleanup that happens at some point.
Right. The community got to clean it up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or I might have to clean it up because it might impact me because I may know the man.
Right.
But you're right. Like, that's why, really, if we were all on point, then women will only have so much room to rebel. You will see less rebellion. But you see so much simping. You see so many men who don't want to establish a skill set. They don't want to engage in entrepreneurship. They may be making a lot of money on their 9-to-5 job or even their 8-to-6 jobs. No, nobody has 9-to-5 job anymore. Not anymore, yeah. Everybody starts at 7:30, 8 o'clock and goes to 6 or 7. But you get comfortable because you like the job or just got, some fringe benefits or is paying a lot of money. And you don't want to take the risk of engaging in entrepreneurship and actually building a polygamous family is a form of entrepreneurship.
Oh, absolutely.
In and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an investment portfolio, of itself. But, a lot of that, again, that speaks again to the quality. That speaks again to some of even the verification of polygyny. Because you do have a lot of men who are not, or a lot of males. Because I don't really throw that term man around as liberally as, or woman as liberally as some do. But, This isn't in my opinion, any real man can handle polygyny. Like when some people say, well, it's not for everyone. It's for men. Yeah. Anything outside of that, anyone who has trouble outside of that, because honestly, if you can't handle managing the energy of 2 women or 3 women or 4 women, you're not even going to be able to properly manage the energy of 2 or 3 or 4 children. Yep. Or a business that has 2 or 3, 4 components to it. Because basically you're learning to manage dynamics. And the same goes on the side for the feminine. Polygyny is for women. All women, any women can handle polygyny. Yep. And I know that may feel insultive. But, I'm here with Hondo Solomon.
Don't throw me in the mix when you say something.
He brings that out.
You make a man, don't put it on me.
But yeah, man, it's like, but that's really the truth of it, man. So many people speak, well, it's not for me, it's not for me. And a lot of times when they break down why it's not for them, the reasons more have to do with personal development or a lack thereof. I'm a jealous person. One woman's headache enough. Well, why is your woman headache?
You chose the wrong woman. You can't gauge polygyny because you out here choosing thoughts and, whores and other rebellious type of females.
Or maybe that's all you can get because you're a cluckhead.
Say that again.
That's all you can get because you're a cluckhead.
Yep.
You see, so a lot of times, we're quick to point those fingers, but we forget that our relationships are a reflection of our inner essence.
Yeah.
So if you got this rebellious, hard-headed woman, first of all, realize that, and I said this to my youth a lot of times, don't worry about a woman's personality. Give her the personality that you want her to have. Personality is a form of spirit. And spirit is injected by the male force, whereas soul is injected by the female force. So you inject your spirit into her personality changes. Now, if your spirit does not have the force to overcome the high energy dynamic of her soul, nothing's going to change. She's going to continue to rebel against you because you're not strong enough to quash the rebellion.
Well, I've said for some time now that, and I go into this in my next book, The Family Crest. I said, if you look at these ancient texts about the formation of men and women, and you look at the mystical meanings of who she is, she actually is the guardian of our soul. That's why, haven't you noticed that when you got more women around and they're doing what they're supposed to do and you're vibing with them, that you feel more relaxed, but at the same time your energy peaks and you're able to get more done. Money, you making more money, you're enjoying your work more, you're enjoying them more. You're actually looking at women differently. That's because women actually are our guardians in that sense, and in some cases even physically. Because we of course can go to different cultures and show how women were a man's bodyguards. I've even seen women where if a certain woman tries to approach their man, and these are monogamous and women who are in monogamous and polygamous marriages, if the wrong type of woman tries to approach their man, it's not out of jealousy or spite, but they get defensive. Yeah. And they like, hey, back up off my man. Yeah. And you see it all the time. Mm-hmm. You even see it in certain animals.
You see it sometimes between two different women.
Yep.
Sometimes you'll have a woman that's tight, and they'll be in the club together, and a brother approaches you, oh, why you want to talk to my homegirl? Yeah. What, you know, because she already knows what it is, you know. Yeah. So, that protective energy, and even when you look across religious and spiritual mythology, you have plenty of stories of that, of women really baptizing and anointing the saviors of those actual mythologies. Yeah. You know.
Absolutely.
Or doctrine.
See, we protect women through our leadership and our guidance and our counsel. You know, that is not so much the physical. A lot of people mistake that, like, oh, the men's were bigger and stronger, so we just, it's like, but remember, you got more women when you're a polygamist. So it goes to show you, like, you can never protect all those women at the same time. Right. So who's protecting who? Yeah. See, we have to start looking at things with a bit more refinement and a bit more detail. And that's when we start leveling up in these discussions, and we begin to guide the narrative into a much more vast place, and we engage in this economic warfare on a little bit more even ground. You see what I'm saying? So
yeah, you're right on that. I mean, but see, that again, that's a deeper level of dialogue. That's why, you know, I was telling you earlier, it's beautiful to share the gems, but you know, at some point you have to start creating an environment for the elite, and it's where they're the ones who are really striving and thirsty and hungry to apply the gems. Because how many brothers are listening to you because they're living vicariously through you, but they're never really going to build up the heart to go home and you know, say, sweetheart, you know, let's have a conversation.
Well, you know, I see it all the time. Brothers will contact me and they're like, well, I don't know, man. I don't know. You know, I don't know. Yeah, but Hondo, but you looking like, you know, at some point you're like, look, man, like, you know, you want to, at some point, and we get these little windows of opportunity, especially after we've been through some type of economic battle. Right. Okay. We get these little windows where we can come up and we can be victorious. And we have to see those opportunities and take it by the, you know, we got to take the bull by the horns and we got to run with it. Because that's at the point where you stop talking like that.
Sure.
You know, and you don't see this hopelessness in men's eyes. Because we've seen it when they're talking about polygamy. Like, I don't know, man. My wife ain't going to have that. You know, us, we looking at you like, what you mean your wife ain't having that? You know, we looking at you funny because you're the man. You're supposed to be leading through your through guidance and counsel and being kind of that statue in the room.
Absolutely.
You know, you're the one who you're the compass. The man is the compass for the family.
Right.
So when we hear men stating that they don't know because of their wife, it's like, okay, so now we know who the compass is in your family. And those are the types of monogamists that polygamous men will not befriend. See, that's another thing that I know that's.
Yeah, they're not of warrior class.
They're not a warrior class.
You really have nothing to speak about with someone who's not a warrior class.
See, this is some of the stuff we coming up, we being a little more savage, but it's true. Yeah. But polygamous men are not against monogamy. Most of us started out as monogamous, okay? But what we're against is prescriptive monogamy, which includes you saying, well, I don't know because my wife won't. It's like, wait a minute. We're outnumbered 3-1 in the whole planet with these women, okay? Everywhere you've gone, Chief, unless it's an all-male venue, you found more women than men, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When you travel to other lands, that's all you see mostly
women. I travel a lot, yeah.
And you travel a lot. Yeah. And I've been almost everywhere in this country. And everywhere I go, no matter what the venue is, unless it's an all-male venue, that's all I see. That's all I see is an abundance of women. So that means that someone has to go in and has to capture that female energy. Because women, that's why you've seen women walk into a store and like, oh my goodness, they start grabbing at things and looking at things. That's natural. There's nothing wrong with that. But you need something to capture all of that unbridled energy and to guide it. Or else it becomes dangerous.
Yeah, you give it a focal point. You know, it becomes nuclear. Mm-hmm. In fact, when you don't allow that, which is funny, we have the nuclear family.
Yeah.
You know,
yep.
It becomes explosive.
That's right.
So you need that focal point, almost a pyramidal focal point, where the base is your multitude of consorts, and a strong man has the force. See, that's the key too. We're talking about a strong man, because when you say something like, okay, I don't know, my wife wouldn't go for that, or I don't know if my wife would go for that. I wouldn't even say that the wife is the compass. I would say that in that family, the compass could be the pastor. It could be that wife's supervisor. It's definitely not him, because he's led by fear.
In other words, there's another man talking in her ear.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You know, there's always a man talking in a woman's ear. Yep. Always. That is the nature of things. You know, so whether that's an unseen masculine energy, whether that's, again, the societal gods of Western culture, because Western culture itself is deified. You know, that's why you'll have people who may be Christians who go to church, but they fornicate. Yeah. Like anyone else. You know, they practice adultery, they drink of the strong vine, you know, they do all of these different things that may be against their scripture, because it's not really so much about the religion for them, it's about the culture that the religion sits inside of. And they have a greater allegiance. So even when they leave those religious structures, they may now say, okay, well, I'm a Muslim now, or I'm practicing Ifa now, I'm dealing with Orisha science.
It depends on what man is talking to them.
Yep.
It depends on what man they're listening to.
But if they're still being told by the gods of that culture, their response is always going to be the same. Because that whole, I don't know if my wife would go with that. You hear that across the board, despite the spiritual investment. You know, yes, you hear that from Muslim men. Now, this is in your book. You know, this is permitted.
Islamic culture was built off of polygyny. It was not built off monogamy. That's the reason that you have 2 billion Muslims. Okay, that's why you got them, because of polygamy.
The strength of the
You're not going to spread like that. Even Jews around the world would not have been able to spread like that if there was no polygamy. See, so don't believe what some of the Ashkenazis are teaching about Rabbi Gershon banning polygamy. No rabbi has halakhic power to ban anything which Torah exhibits and regulates. See, and that's just the truth. But I mentioned that in another video. But it's interesting because,
but that's the connection again to the foreign deity. Because again, it's not. That's what I'm saying. It takes you outside of your scriptural doctrine. Because if my, you know, if I'm reading the Bible, I'm reading Torah, whichever one, but my allegiance is to the actual culture that cradles it, at least my perception of the culture, then anyone who is a representative or ambassador of that culture can jump in front of me and say, well, this is what we do now. Yeah. That's going to supersede the book, because the book was really just an addendum to my true allegiance to that culture. Right. You know, so the foreign gods that, you know, when our children go into foreign lands and we lose them to their worship of foreign gods, those foreign gods are those foreign cultures. Yeah. It's not about Jehovah. It's not about Allah. You know, it's about the culture. And that's where a lot of that struggle comes in terms of what you're talking about with the plurality. And that's why I say the context. What is the cultural context? Because if that's not agreed upon, the knowledge gets perverted. And it really just, it fizzles, because you still have to battle the allegiance to the gods. Yeah. You know, and I think that's what we deal with. And when you get to the higher levels of it, like we were talking about the generals talk, when you get into that clan sphere, because your spiritual investment is different than mine. Right. You know, I'm dealing with indigenous sciences. I'm dealing with, you know, my system, Anu. And your perspective is different. However, neither one of us, we are both divested from the Western gods of culture. So you find as soon as, which often you refer to as an Anglosphere, that's what it really is. Yeah. So when you find when
it's imperialism.
And imperialism. Yeah. So when there's a divestment from that, it gets really interesting as to how many alignments now happen, you know, despite the spiritual or cultural investment, how many alignments happen. That's when you start to realize, like when you speak about prescriptive monogamy, we're also speaking about prescriptive culture. That's the trip up. And that's what I think really...
An enforcement of foreign values to your own.
Right. It's its own inquisition. But the Inquisition is the actual culture. Like before the Inquisition was into Christianity, now the Inquisition is into Western culture. You know, because it's become a theocracy at that level, you know. But yeah, absolutely. I mean,
so what you're saying is that Western culture and all its trappings is actually a religion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's deep, brother. That's deep.
Yeah, it's the religion.
But I can see that. I can see that.
That's why you can have so many people bounce around from spiritual system to spiritual system when they become quote unquote conscious, but their core values don't actually change. You know, because it's nothing like let's say if you have a Christian, and I know I keep coming to the Christian thing, but it's easy.
Yeah.
Now I can prove to you within 15 seconds that his name was not Jesus.
Right.
Does it make any difference?
No.
Because
there will always be proof texting of what we call the Bible, the Western canon, the 66 book canon. There's always going to be these emotional responses. Well, it doesn't matter because no matter what we call them, you know, as if names don't mean anything.
All of a sudden. But you told me there's power in the name of Jesus. And if I say Yahshua, you're saying the blood of Jesus on me now.
See? Yep.
You know, now we're back there. You know, so it's like...
But see, Western culture, names mean less than in Eastern and other traditional societal cultures. It doesn't... That's actually a perfect example because when you call someone by their name, you're actually invoking the power that they have.
Absolutely.
So, you know, if your name means king or first or leader, anything like that, that's what people are calling you.
Sure.
They're invoking those attributes when they call you by name. That's why, for instance, slaves will be renamed or they will receive no name.
Right.
And you just don't get a name.
It's a lockdown.
At all.
Right. See? It's a lockdown. So whether I can name you or strip you of your name, if you're able to name someone or strip them of their name, and in fact, from a metaphysical level, you still named them. You know, because by naming something, you create an abstraction of it. You know, if I say your name is Hondo, I now separate you from me. If I say you have no name, but I have a name, I separate you from me. So it's still that same power of abstraction, you know, where you're pulling one thing. And if you look in most of your spiritual texts, the only one that has that power of abstraction is your supreme being. Well, I'm taking this out of this to create this and to create that, you know, so it's absolutely a religion. Western culture is absolutely a religion. And that's the stumbling block for many people when it comes to polygyny, because no matter how in-depth or factual the conversation becomes, it always comes back to a Western value being affirmed or if you're being disruptive to that value. I don't know if my wife is gonna go for that. Then you don't really know your wife.